The former Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam, is defending Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia's claims linking him to Ghana's recent economic challenges. He insists the accusations are inaccurate and are politically motivated. With just days to the NPP presidential primaries, Dr. Amin Adam argues that the economic gains being touted by the Mahama-led administration are largely built on foundations laid by the previous NPP government under the leadership of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. We'll hear from him shortly, but first listen to the General Secretary of the NPP, Justin Frimpong-Kodia, who says the party is fully prepared ahead of the upcoming presidential primaries. He spoke earlier today on the AM show.
Made tremendous improvement and headway with respect to what we are supposed to do as a party. And like I said, once we get over with the presidential primary, because that is the main issues in the cracks in the party because of several polarization and divisions on our front. But once we're able to get over the 31st, then we are good to go.
Well, there were some concerns that leadership of the party were doing things in favor of Dr. Bawumia. With this opportunity, was that really the case?
Well, it's certainly an unfounded allegation, and it's something that I disagree with anyone who have that notion, because as General Secretary, I have not done anything to the contrary to suggest that I'm supporting candidate A or candidate B, because everything that we've done, the setting up of the elections committee, have they done something that suggests that they are doing or they are scheming to favor a particular candidate? No.
We can now hear from former Finance Minister Dr. Amin Adam, who maintains that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia remains the best candidate to lead the NPP, citing his track record in governance, innovation and economic management.
The economy crumbled because there were factors beyond our control. Bawumia didn't bring COVID. Bawumia didn't impose the Russia-Ukraine war. And when you are running an economy, there are factors, exogenous factors, that are beyond your control. You can manage them to some level, but you cannot have full control over them. And that was why when we started the IMF program, the IMF insisted that we should build the reserves, the international reserves of the country, so that we can use it to cushion ourselves when we have crisis. That was why reserves that we had built so much before COVID could take us to 4 months of import cover. But as a result of COVID, we had to rely on the reserves. And the reserves depleted to the extent that by the end of 2022, we were running below 3 months of import cover. Because you agree that you must build resilience to be able to offset the effects of external exigencies. And so it wasn't Bawumia who caused it. But what did Bawumia do to help us come out of the recovery? The domestic gold purchase program was introduced. And that helped a lot in bringing us to the recovery levels.
Well, let's explore this further. Join me via Zoom now is Kofi Tonto. He is a political aide and former Vice President former Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. We appreciate your time here on The Pulse. Let's delve right into it. I'd like to start with your assessment of Mahama's 1 year in office. From the camp of Dr. Bawumia, what would you say is his performance?
Yeah, a very good evening to you and to your cherished viewers. I think President Mahama's performance has been a mixed bag. You know, we've seen some recovery in some space. We've seen very bad decisions in other spaces. For example, if you look at his decision to fire some Ghanaians, you know, who were rightfully employed. If you look at the vandalism and the, violence activities that occurred early stages of his government. And then you look at some positives, of course, looking at the appreciation of the cedi, even though we have strongly argued that that has been done artificially, looking at inflation, generally, you would have to say that they've seen some progress in that space. Then you have other issues like the gold board issue, which has, completely derailed trust in the Dory trading space. And then you also have to look at Galamsey. I mean, you were talking to my friend Dakon, MP for Swami, and then Ken Ashigbe. I was actually surprised of Ken Ashigbe's current position on Galamsey, because I heard him on TV3 rightfully condemning the government and saying that people around the president are highly involved in Galamsey, importing equipment and then also weapons. He said it on TV3. So I was actually so surprised, and this is just last week. So I was actually so surprised with the pivot in position. I mean, generally, if you look at Galamsey, we haven't seen much. So yes, while I acknowledge that we've seen some degree of progress on the economic side, other sides have not been so positive in terms of violence, in terms of, treating a section of Ghanaians as though they are not Ghanaians, in terms of Galamsey, etc. So it's been a mixed bag of issues. But generally, I think the president has been calm, which I think is positive. We must commend him for that as well. And then you look at issues of, for example, the unfortunate accident that happened at Bema camp. At Ewa. My sister, as you sit here, do you know what caused and who were responsible and who has been held accountable? I don't know. So whereas we look at some positives, we must be very careful not to overlook other critical negatives, that have occurred within the last few months. 6 young people cannot die, and there will be no accountability. Just because we have seen some degree of progress on the economic side, we must necessarily overlook the fact that 6 young children died and 0 accountability. That is not how we run the country.
Investigations into that. Well, at least that's what we're told. But let's delve into...
No. Launch investigations into what? Children, young ladies have died. 4 months on, you've launched investigation into what? We all saw what happened. What investigations do you need to do to punish the culprit? You engage in activity to recruit young people. You had a person who was responsible for the recruitment. You had a person who was responsible for setting up the recruitment process. What else do you need to do? Nobody has been punished. Lives have been lost. Have we even compensated the parents? Have we given them any sort of reprieve? No, none, 0. And we are supposed to overlook all of that on the back of what? Investigation? I saw the funerals. Unfortunately, I didn't see any high-ranking government official even at the funerals. Look, we are building a society. A society that doesn't value human life is not a society worth fighting for. 6 children have, I keep saying children, young women have died and no accountability, and we are supposed to be happy because of what? So these are all issues that have to culminate together to determine the performance of the government. I am very okay to admit where there have been positives, as I've already done, in the space of inflation, in the space of cedi appreciation, even though we have our questions. I'm okay to, even petrol, for example. I saw petrol has come down to 10 cedis, 99 pesos. Excellent, no issues with that. We are happy, because for me, as the NPP, we don't need President Mahama to fail for us to come back to power. Ghana or Ghanaians don't think in a binary way that one has to fail for the other to occur. No. President Mahama can be successful. In fact, he must be successful for the benefit of all of us. He must be successful. Ghana cannot continue to lag behind. So as a political party, we have no interest in wishing bad for President Mahama. We want him to succeed because we believe that even in the face of a success, Ghanaians can still decide that, look, although you've done well, going forward, we need a leader whose vision transcends the ordinary.
Let's talk about the internal campaign for the NPP.
No problem, no problem.
So far,
another time we can delve. Go ahead.
So far, we've been on the campaign trail tracking the various camps, Kennedy, Brian Achampong, Duchum, and even Bawumia's camp. Where are you right now? We have just barely few weeks to the general elections, the internal party elections. How is campaign ongoing so far, the party primaries? How is it going so far?
So far, it's been positive. We finished the Greater Accra region yesterday. As I speak to you, he's currently in the northern part of the country, northern region to be precise. He did Salaga North, or he's doing Salaga North, Salaga South today, and continue to finish in the northern region. Once he's done, he will return back to the southern part and complete the entire tour in the Ashanti region. I think so far, so good. Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the different polls from different pollsters just pegging your candidate as leader in the race. You're on the ground. Is that the case? Are people that optimistic that Dr. Bawumia is a man for the job?
I am of the strongest view that delegates are well grounded in the fact that our political history replete with political consistency. If you look at our history from President Kufuor to President Mills to President Kufuor to even President Mahama, history is replete with evidence of political consistency. So that is not lost on delegates. That look, in our history, very often leaders have to show up a few times. In some circumstances, they have to show up 3 times before Ghanaians will repose the requisite trust in him or in her to give the power to become a president. So delegates are very well grounded in their thinking that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia deserves another opportunity. We deserve to market him to the Ghanaians again. After all, amongst the other candidates, or amongst the 5 candidates, he's the most marketed, he's the most prepared, and he's the most formidable, as far as the most experienced. So why do you want to start from ground zero? You've made some great impact. Why not continue? Especially where history has shown that continuity, consistency gives value. So we'll definitely...
You say he's the most experienced candidate, yeah. But then let's say presumably he wins the upcoming primaries. Then you have to go against the NDC. Looking at the party's current performance and the positive outlook of the economy, how do you plan to pitch your candidate as the man for the job?
I think I've already answered that question in my earlier submission, that if President Mahama succeeds, that is not a guarantee that the NDC will win the next election.
What will be his message?
No,
what will
please,
be his message to Ghanaians?
Let me finish my position.
On the economy, what will be Bawumia's message to Ghanaians?
But how can Bawumia determine the final message on the economy when we are just 1 year into a 4-year term? The point I am making to you is that once we get there, Bawumia's position will largely center on ideas that transform nations, ideas that build economies from a certain percentage to a higher percentage. For example, if you look at the history of Wandu, if you look at the history of other Asian countries and how they were able to transform.
Kofi, what is Bawumia's message to Ghanaians, really? I'm sure you already have something that you're pushing as his campaign team member, as his aide. I'm sure you already have a message to Ghanaians. And so we're wondering what that message would be. We've heard from the camp of Kennedy Achampong. He seems to be pushing the jobs agenda. We just want to know what he would tell Ghanaians should he win the upcoming primaries.
I'm telling you, are ambushing me. I'm telling you what the message is.
Okay.
That the message will be a leader who is going to leapfrog Ghana into the next industrial revolution by leveraging technology, leveraging modern sources of doing things to build a modern society. His message is that we started a process of formalizing Ghana's economy, which today has shown to be very positive for our economy in terms of the economic impacts that we are even currently seeing. Let's build on that. Let's continue to formalize our, because that's the only way. And that's why I was citing examples of economies that were informal, but became formal, and that alone increased their GDP sometimes by 1,000% just by leveraging technology. So President Bawumia is going to definitely highlight on those things. But the point I was trying to make to you is that we don't need President Mahama to fail before we can present formidable candidates. That's the point I was trying to make to you. So the message is very clear. Building a modern society, leveraging technology, leveraging the skill set of our young people. For example, today, if you want to create jobs for young people, what kind of jobs are you creating for them? The Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas are looking for modern jobs. Let's look at the Poland example. Poland, after all the challenges that they went through, they had to take a policy decision that let's modernize our economy by building modern skills or giving our citizens modern skills. And that is why today, Poland is one of the advanced countries in Europe, because they diversified their skill force and they were able to build that modern society, leveraging technology. And that's precisely what we are going to do. Ghana cannot continue to operate on the same tangent, brick and mortar. We need to look at how we can even use the service industry. When you go to Singapore, they are using the service industry. Why must we always, I'm not saying that manufacturing is bad. We are going to invest heavily in manufacturing. But what I'm saying is that if you look at advanced countries, they are leveraging service industries. If you take a company in America, for example, they may not produce a physical product, but the services they are offering runs into billions of dollars. These are the things that Ghana needs to do, the modern jobs, the modern solutions. And that is what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia stands for.
Thank you so much. Kofi Tonto is political aide to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So we're just...